Have you ever sat alone on a quiet evening, surrounded by nothing but the gentle hum of your own thoughts, wondering why genuine kindness seems to lead to solitude? That question, that deep soul-stirring question, is what brings us together today. A heart so generous it gives without counting the cost. A spirit so gentle it refuses to push back against life's storms. A soul so pure it sees the best in everyone, even those who take advantage of that very quality. Does this sound familiar? Perhaps too familiar? You see, I've spent countless hours listening to stories. Stories that mirror your own experiences, stories that echo with the same painful refrain. I give and give and give, yet here I am alone. But today, we're going to uncover a truth that might shake you to your core. A truth that will transform how you view your kindness, your relationships, and most importantly, because being nice isn't what's keeping you alone. It's how you're being nice that's creating this painful pattern. Let me share something profound with you. During a late-night conversation with someone who had just ended another disappointing relationship, they said something that stopped me in my tracks. I feel like I'm a welcome mat with the word home written on it, but everyone just wipes their feet and walks right past me. That's when it hit me. The fundamental misunderstanding about what it means to be truly nice versus being passively agreeable. And this misunderstanding is at the heart of why so many wonderful people find themselves walking through life alone. You see, somewhere along the way, we've confused being nice with being invisible. We've mistaken self-sacrifice for love. We've convinced ourselves that putting everyone else's needs first is the path to connection. But what if I told you that this very belief, this deep-seated conviction that being nice means being selfless, is actually pushing away the very connections you're trying to create? Think about the oxygen mask principle on airplanes. You must secure your own mask before helping others. Why? Because if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you can't help anyone else. Yet in life, how many of us are trying to give oxygen to others while quietly suffocating ourselves? When was the last time you said no to someone and felt completely at peace with that decision? When was the last time you expressed your true feelings without first filtering them through a lens of, but will this upset them? The uncomfortable silence in this room speaks volumes, because for many of us, the very thought of prioritizing our own needs feels selfish, wrong, almost cruel. And therein lies the first crucial insight into why nice people often find themselves alone. We've learned to equate self-respect with selfishness. But here's the truth that might initially feel like a splash of cold water on your face. People aren't drawn to those who constantly sacrifice themselves. They're drawn to those who know their worth. Think about it. Have you ever truly respected someone who never respected themselves? The universe operates on a profound principle. It reflects back to us the value we place on ourselves. When we consistently signal to the world that our needs, our boundaries, our desires are secondary, guess what message we're sending? We're broadcasting that we're secondary characters in our own life story. And here's where it gets really interesting, and perhaps a bit uncomfortable. The very behaviors you think are drawing people closer might be pushing them away. That constant availability, it can make you seem desperate rather than that inability to say no. It often reads as a lack of authenticity rather than kindness. That tendency to agree with everyone, it makes people trust you less, not more. I can see some of you shifting in your seats. This might feel like a challenge to everything you believed about being a good person. But stay with me, because what I'm about to share will radically transform how you view kindness, boundaries, and your own worth. You see, true niceness, the kind that attracts rather than repels, it comes from a place of strength, not weakness. It comes from a full cup that overflows naturally, not from an empty vessel desperately trying to pour out its last drops. The kind of niceness that builds lasting connections is grounded in self-respect, clear boundaries, and authentic expression. Let me paint a picture of what this looks like in reality. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, someone agrees to help a friend move on their only day off, even though they're exhausted and have their own responsibilities to attend to. They say yes, because they can't bear the thought of disappointing someone. In the second scenario, someone honestly tells their friend, I wish I could help, but I need this day to recharge, and take care of some important personal matters. Can I help you find someone else who might be available? Which person would you trust more? Which person seems more authentic? Which person are you more likely to want to build a deeper connection with? The first person might seem nicer on the surface, but they're actually engaging in what I call martyrdomness, a pattern of self-sacrifice that ultimately breeds resentment and distance. The second person, while potentially disappointing their friend in the moment, is demonstrating something far more valuable: authenticity, self-awareness, and healthy boundaries. I can feel the energy in this room shifting as these words land. Some of you might be feeling a mix of recognition and resistance. Perhaps you're thinking, but if I start saying no, if I start putting myself first, sometimes won't people leave? And that's exactly the fear that keeps so many wonderful souls trapped in patterns of excessive giving that lead to loneliness. But here's the beautiful paradox we're going to explore. When you begin to value yourself appropriately, when you start setting healthy boundaries, when you learn to be nice from a place of strength rather than fear, that's when real connections begin to form. That's when you start attracting people who appreciate you for who you are, not just what you can do for them. In the next part of our journey together, we're going to delve deeper into the specific patterns that keep nice people stuck in loneliness, and more importantly, how to transform these patterns while maintaining your fundamental goodness. Because the goal isn't to stop being nice. It's to be nice in a way that honors both yourself and others. Remember, your kindness is a gift to this world. But like any gift, it needs to be wrapped in the paper of self-respect and tied with the ribbon of healthy boundaries. Only then can it truly be received in the way it deserves. We move forward, I want you to hold on to this thought. You don't have to choose between being nice and being alone. There's a third option: being authentically kind while maintaining strong boundaries. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. What most people don't realize about loneliness is that it's not about the quantity of people around us. It's about the quality of our connections. And here's something that might surprise you. Being too nice often creates shallow connections rather than deep ones. Let me explain why. When we're too focused on being nice, we often create a persona, a carefully crafted version of ourselves that we think others will find more acceptable. We hide our true thoughts, suppress our real feelings, and silence our authentic voice. We become what I call emotional chameleons, constantly changing our colors to match what we think others want to see. But authentic connections can't be built on authentic foundations. Think about the deepest conversations you've ever had, the moments where you felt truly seen and understood. Did those moments happen when you were carefully monitoring every word, every reaction, every expression? Or did they happen when you let your guard down and allowed your true self to emerge? The painful truth is that many nice people have become masters of emotional hiding. You know exactly what I mean, don't you? That moment when someone asks, "How are you?" and you automatically respond, "I'm fine," even though your heart is breaking. That instinct to swallow your disagreement with a smile because you don't want to create waves. That habit of putting your dreams on hold because someone else needs your time and energy. Each time we do this, we're not just hiding from others, we're hiding from ourselves. And in this hiding, we create the very loneliness we're trying to avoid, because true connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage to be imperfect, to be real, to sometimes be not nice. Here's a profound truth that took me years to understand. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with humanity. Your struggles, your doubts, your occasional anger or frustration, these aren't flaws to be hidden. They're the very things that make you relatable, that make you human, that make you real. But many nice people have developed what I call the perfectionism of kindness. They believe they must always be understanding, always be patient, always be available. This creates an impossible standard that not only exhausts you, but also makes others feel uncomfortable around you. Because who can relax around someone who never shows a crack in their... Let me share something powerful with you. Your imperfections are not obstacles to connection. They're invitations for it. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, to admit When you're struggling, to ask for help sometimes instead of always being the helper. You create space for real relationships to form. This brings us to one of the most painful patterns I've observed in nice people. The tendency to become everyone's emotional support system while having no support system of their own. You become so good at being the shoulder to cry on that people forget you might need a shoulder too. You become so reliable in being there for others that people assume you don't need anyone to be there. I always being the giver, never the receiver. You're actually teaching people how to treat you. You're setting up a dynamic where your role is to support, to listen, to help, but never to need, to want, to require support yourself. Think about the people in your life right now. How many of them know your deepest fears? How many have seen you cry? How many know what keeps you up at night? If the answer is very few or none, then you're not experiencing true connection. You're experiencing a series of one-sided relationships where you're the perpetual giver. The irony is that by trying to be the perfect friend, the perfect supporter, the perfect listener, you're actually preventing people from being that for you. Because real friendship, real connection requires reciprocity. It requires both people to be able to be strong sometimes and vulnerable others. Both people to be able to give and receive. This is where the transformation begins. It starts with understanding that being nice doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean being everyone's solution. It doesn't mean silencing your own needs. True niceness, the kind that creates genuine connections, comes from a place of, what if your role isn't to be everyone's rock, but to be real? What if instead of trying to be the perfect support for others, you allowed yourself to be perfectly imperfect? What if instead of always being the one who understands, you allowed yourself to be the one who needs to be understood sometimes? This is where many nice people feel resistance. There's a fear that if you stop being the perpetual giver, people will leave. But here's the truth. The people who leave when you start having boundaries weren't there for you in the first place. They were there for what you could do for them. And that's not connection. That's convenience. Real connection happens when both people feel safe enough to be themselves. Their full, complex, imperfect selves. It happens when you can say, I'm not okay, and trust that the other person won't run away. It happens when you can disagree and know that it won't end the relationship. It happens when you can have needs and know that expressing them won't make you too much. This is the paradox of nice people and loneliness. In trying to be endlessly agreeable, endlessly available, endlessly understanding, we create the very disconnection we're trying to avoid. Because real connection doesn't want your perfection, it wants your authenticity. It doesn't need your constant agreement. It needs your honest thoughts. It doesn't require your endless availability. It requires your genuine presence when you are available. The path forward isn't about becoming less nice. It's about becoming more real. It's about understanding that true kindness includes kindness to yourself. It's about recognizing that real connections are built on mutual vulnerability, not one-sided giving. It's about learning that boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that teach people how to stay in. We move forward, I want you to consider this question. What would it feel like to be both nice and real? To be both kind and honest? To be both caring and boundaried? Because that's where the magic happens. That's where loneliness ends and true connection begins. And in our next segment, we're going to explore exactly how to make this transformation. How to maintain your fundamental kindness while building the boundaries and self-respect that attract genuine, lasting connections. Let's dive into the heart of transformation, the place where change becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Because understanding why nice people end up alone is only half the journey. The other half is learning how to maintain your kindness while building the inner strength that attracts genuine connections. Think about a beautiful garden for a moment. A garden needs boundaries, fences that protect it, borders that define it. Without these boundaries, anyone can trample the flowers, pets can dig up the roots, and weeds can overtake the space. Your heart, your energy, your emotional well-being. These are your garden. And like any garden, they need protection to flourish. The boundaries are about keeping people out. In reality, boundaries are about teaching people how to stay in. They're about showing others how to treat you with the same respect and care that you so freely give to them. One of the most powerful revelations in this journey is understanding that loneliness isn't just about being physically alone, it's about being emotionally unknown. And nice people often remain unknown because they're too busy trying to be what everyone else needs them. Every time you say yes, when you want to say no, you're not just betraying your own needs. You're teaching people that your needs don't matter. Every time you swallow your true feelings to keep the peace, you're not just maintaining harmony, you're creating emotional distance. Every time you put on a brave face when you're hurting inside, you're not just being strong. You're building walls between yourself and authentic connection. The transformation begins with a simple but powerful shift. Start treating your own heart with the same gentleness you offer others. Start honoring your own feelings with the same respect you give to everyone else's emotions. Start protecting your own energy with the same care you use when supporting others. This isn't selfish. It's essential, because you cannot give from an empty cup, and you cannot create genuine connections from a place of emotional exhaustion. Let me share something profound about the nature of attraction and connection. People are drawn to authenticity like moths to a flame. When you start showing up as your real self, with all your beautiful imperfections, with your honest feelings, with your true thoughts, you become magnetic. Not to everyone, perhaps, but to the right ones, to the ones who will value you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them. This is where the magic happens. When you stop trying to be perfect to start being real, you create space for others to do the same. When you admit your own struggles, you give others permission to be vulnerable too. When you express your needs clearly, you invite others into a dance of mutual care and respect. But here's the challenging part, the part that makes many nice people uncomfortable. This transformation requires you to risk disapproval. It requires you to be willing to let some people walk away. It requires you to accept that not everyone will understand or support your journey toward authenticity. And that's okay, because the truth is you're not losing real connections when you start being authentic. You're losing connections that were based on a version of you that was never real to begin with. Think about the relationships in your life right now. How many of them know the real you? How many of them have seen your tears, heard your fears, witnessed your anger? How many of them know what makes your heart sing, what keeps you up at night, what dreams you hold close to your chest? If the answer is very few or none, then it's time for a change. It's time to start letting people see the real you, not the perfectly nice version you think they want to see, but the beautifully complex human being you actually are. This journey requires courage. It requires the courage to say no when you need to, even if it disappoints someone. It requires the courage to express your feelings even when they're not pretty. It requires the courage to have needs and to voice them clearly. But here's the beautiful truth. This courage doesn't make you less nice. It makes you more real. And real is what creates connection. Real is what draws people in. Real is what makes space for love to grow. The transformation we're talking about isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about understanding that your kindness is most powerful when it comes from a place of choice rather than fear. When it comes from authentic caring rather than the need to please. Think about the most magnetic people you know. The ones who draw others to them naturally. Are they perfect? No. Are they always available? No. Are they endlessly agreeable? What makes them magnetic is their authenticity, their willingness to be real, to have boundaries, to be sometimes strong and sometimes vulnerable. This is the key to breaking free from the pattern of nice people ending up alone. Stop trying to be perfect and start being real. Stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being something real to the right ones. Stop trying to avoid disapproval and start seeking authenticity. The right people, the ones who are meant to be in your life, will be drawn to your authenticity, not repelled by it. They will respect your boundaries, not resent them. They will value your realness, not reject it. As we move into our next segment, we're going to explore specific strategies for making this transformation. Practical steps you can take to start showing up as your authentic self while maintaining your fundamental kindness. Because the goal isn't to stop being nice. It's to be nice in a way that honors both yourself and others. Now comes the transformative part, the practical wisdom that will help you break free from the cycle of loneliness while maintaining your beautiful, kind heart. Because breaking free doesn't mean breaking down who you are. It means building up who you're meant. Think about the concept of value for a moment. When something is too easily available, too readily accessible, people often value it less. This isn't because they're bad people. It's human nature. When you're constantly available, constantly agreeable, constantly putting others first, you inadvertently teach people that your time, your energy, and your presence are worth less than theirs. But here's the powerful truth. Your presence is a gift. Your kindness is a treasure. Your time is precious. And it's time to... The first step in this transformation is understanding that saying no doesn't make you unkind. It makes you honest. When you say no to something that doesn't align with your values, your energy levels, or your needs, you're saying yes to authenticity. You're saying yes to self-respect. You're saying yes to real connection. Every time you override your own needs to please others, you're not just hurting yourself. You're also preventing others from experiencing the gift of giving to you. You're denying them the opportunity to be there for you, to support you, to show up for you in meaningful ways. This is where many nice people get stuck. They become so accustomed to being the giver that receiving feels uncomfortable, almost wrong. But true connection requires both giving and receiving. It requires a dance of mutual care, mutual support, mutual vulnerability. They may share something powerful. Your vulnerability is not weakness. It's an invitation for genuine connection. When you allow others to see your struggles, your fears, your needs, you're not burdening them, you're trusting them. And trust is the foundation of all meaningful relationships. You need to start with trusting yourself. Trust that your feelings are valid. Trust that your needs matter. Trust that your boundaries are important. Because if you don't trust these things about yourself, how can you expect others to? The transformation we're talking about happens in small moments of choice. It's in the moment when someone asks for your time and you pause to check in with yourself before answering. It's in the moment when you feel hurt and choose to express it instead of swallowing it. It's in the moment when you need help and choose to ask for it instead of struggling alone. These moments might feel uncomfortable at first. Your heart might race when you say no. Your voice might shake when you express a need. Your hands might tremble when you set a boundary. But remember, this discomfort is not danger. It's growth. It's transformation. It's the birth of a new way of being. Think about a time when someone respected your boundaries, honored your no, or held space for your vulnerability. How did that make you feel? Did you think less of them? Did you see them as unkind? Or did their self-respect make you respect them more? The truth is, when you start respecting yourself, you teach others how to respect you too. When you start honoring your own boundaries, you teach others how to honor them too. When you start expressing your authentic feelings, you create space for real connection to grow. This transformation isn't about becoming hard or cold. It's not about building walls. It's about building bridges. Bridges that connect your authentic self with others who are ready for real connection. Consider the difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice often comes from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of being alone. But being kind comes from a place of strength to be real, to be honest, to be authentic. This shift from nice to kind, from pleasing to authentic, from perfect to real. This is where true connection begins. Because real connection doesn't want your perfection. It doesn't need your constant availability. It doesn't require your endless agreeability. Real connection wants your truth. It needs your authenticity. It requires your realness. When you stop trying so hard to be liked by everyone, you become more likable to the right people. When you stop trying to avoid loneliness at all costs, you create space for genuine connection to find you. The right people, the ones who are meant to be in your life, will be drawn to your authenticity like moths to a flame. They won't run from your boundaries. They'll respect them. They won't be repelled by your needs. They'll want to meet them. They won't be scared of your realness. They'll be inspired by it. As we move into our final segment, we're going to explore how to maintain this transformation, how to stay true to yourself while navigating relationships, and how to create connections that are both authentic and lasting. Because the goal isn't just to break free from loneliness, it's to create a life filled with genuine, meaningful connections that honor both your kindness and your truth. This transformation is not just about changing your behavior. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. Because when you truly value yourself, when you honor your own needs, when you respect your own boundaries, you create a foundation for real connection to build upon. And that's where we're heading next, into the final chapter of this journey, where we'll explore how to maintain these changes and create lasting connections that fulfill you rather than drain you. We've arrived at the most powerful part of our journey together, the part where transformation becomes lasting change. Because understanding why nice people end up alone isn't enough. Learning how to set boundaries isn't enough. Even starting to value yourself isn't enough. If you can't maintain these changes in the face of real-world challenges, think about the times you've tried to change before. Perhaps you set boundaries only to let them crumble when someone pushed back. Perhaps you started expressing your needs only to retreat into silence when someone made you feel guilty. Perhaps you began to value yourself more, only to fall back into old patterns when loneliness crept in. This is where the real work begins. Because maintaining transformation requires something deeper than just knowledge. It requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself in relation to the world. The truth that many nice people struggle to accept is this: you are not responsible for other people's happiness. You are not obligated to sacrifice your well-being for others. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Let that sink in for a moment. Your worth is not measured by how much you give. Your value is not determined by how available you are. Your lovability is not dependent on how much you sacrifice. This is where the deepest healing begins, in recognizing that you deserve love and connection simply because you exist, not because of what you do for others. But here's the challenging part, the part that makes many nice people uncomfortable. Maintaining these changes means being willing to disappoint others. It means being willing to sit with the discomfort of someone being upset with. It means being willing to risk temporary loneliness for the sake of authentic connection. Think about it this way. Every time you honor your boundaries, express your needs, or show up authentically, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for every relationship in your life. Because authentic relationships can only be built on authentic foundations. The beautiful truth is that when you start maintaining your boundaries consistently, when you keep expressing your needs clearly, when you continue showing up authentically, something magical happens. The right people start showing up in your life. People who respect your boundaries, people who honor your needs, people who value your authenticity. It's not linear. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns. There will be moments when fear of loneliness tempts you to abandon your boundaries. There will be times when the familiar comfort of people-pleasing calls to you. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you're building trust with yourself. Every time you maintain a boundary despite discomfort, you're strengthening your self-respect. Every time you express a need despite fear, you're deepening your self-love. This journey isn't just about not being alone. It's about being whole. Because when you're whole, when you're integrated, when you're authentic, that's when real connection becomes possible. The loneliness you feel when you're surrounded by people who don't really know you is far more painful than the temporary solitude of waiting for authentic connections to develop. Your transformation isn't just about changing your behavior. It's about changing your relationship with yourself. It's about moving from self-abandonment to self-honor, from self-sacrifice to self-respect, from self-denial to self-love. As you maintain this transformation, as you continue to show up authentically, as you keep honoring your truth, you become a lighthouse for others. Your courage in being real gives others permission to be real too. Your strength in maintaining boundaries shows others it's possible to be both kind and strong. The world doesn't need more nice people who abandon themselves to please others. The world needs more whole people who can show up authentically, love genuinely, and connect deeply. Your journey from here is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about maintaining your kindness while honoring your truth. It's about creating connections that nourish rather than drain you. It's about building a life where you can be both loving and loved, both giving and receiving, both strong and vulnerable. The loneliness you felt, it wasn't because you were too nice. It was because you weren't being real. And now you know the truth. Real connection doesn't want your perfection. It wants your authenticity. It doesn't need your constant giving. It needs your genuine presence. It doesn't require your endless sacrifice. It requires your honest truth. As you leave here today, carry this with you. Your kindness is not the problem. That's one of your greatest strengths. But kindness without boundaries is self-abandonment. Giving without receiving is martyrdom. Loving others while neglecting yourself is unsustainable. Maintain your boundaries with gentle firmness. Express your needs with loving clarity. Show up authentically with courageous vulnerability, because that's how nice people find their tribe. That's how kind souls create lasting connections. That's how genuine hearts find their way home. You are not meant to be alone. You are meant to be real. And in your realness, in your truth, in your authentic expression of both strength and kindness, that's where true connection will find you. This is not the end of your journey. It's the beginning of your authentic life. A life where you can be both nice and strong, both kind and boundaried, both loving and loved. Your heart is a gift to this world, but it needs to be given wisely, received gratefully, and protected fiercely. That's not selfish. That's sacred. That's not harsh. That's holy. That's not lonely. That's love. Go forth and be real. Be authentic. Be whole. Because that's how nice people find their way to lasting love and genuine connection. That's how kind hearts find their way home. The world is waiting for your authentic self. And trust me, when you show up as your real self, maintain your boundaries with love, and honor your truth with courage, your people will find you. And they won't just wipe their feet on your welcome mat. They'll join you in creating a home where both giving and receiving are honored, where both strength and kindness are celebrated, where both you and them can be fully, beautifully, authentically real.